Welcome back, listeners. Allie, we kind of ran out of time there a little bit in the first segment. I think we'll continue the conversation around some of the ugly corn or the phone calls I've had that, hey, I think seemed like my corn looked great early. It's going a little bit backwards now. And we talked a little bit about, maybe growers that were a little front loaded, a little heavier with nitrogen, sulfur. Maybe that's looking a little better than the guys that got half it out. I'm going to come back to side dress. Any other maybe just fertilizer system things, Allie, that have maybe, jumped out at you as you've been walking fields?
I think from a generalization standpoint of things, if we look at nitrogen source and application timing, fields that maybe have those manure histories or those that have spring applied nitrogen, especially in the form of urea or 28%, maybe a little bit more shallower placed and more accessible to those roots early on. They tend to look like those more even fields across the board versus maybe we look at the difference between those that are or are not using starter, depending on how much nitrogen they're putting on up front and then planned side dress applications. There's just a huge difference in maybe having a little bit more of that nitrogen up front to keep things even, but at the same point of time, I mean, if we're doing that side dress application right timing wise as well, you can still remedy a few of those things across the board. But maybe a few specifics, I think you lay it out really nice of some of the differences between what we're seeing versus not seeing work well.
Yeah. And the starter side of things that, this could be a whole episode sometime in the off season too, about where to go with that. And, there's been a little bit of a transition to maybe going away from in-furrow starter altogether in some operations that they're not dropping starter. Some have maybe taken a step further where we're going back to higher volume, using 20 to 32 blended with ATS, and just dribbling out the back. And that system, and the acres that have that where, it's maybe 10, 12 gallons dribbling at 2x0 surface applied you can really see it now. And it's kind of nice where if your row cleaners are working good, you're still placing that on clean dirt. You're not intercepting residue. And it really seems like getting from like V4 to V8, it really kicks into gear. And then, some of the other broadcast fertilizer kicks in. But that's just a couple observations I've seen where, especially corn on corn, guys that are dribbling some high volume out the back, it seems like it's had a really positive effect. And I'll keep watching that. I think a lot of this is going to balance out here in time, but it has been just a kind of a unique year where everything looks so good early, and now we're seeing some unevenness out there. But it's just a victim of residue and some lack of fall tillage and everything in between. And we're just paying for compaction over the last two seasons because we just had so much record rainfall the last couple of years that we're just trying to heal up some of that ground. And it's probably another nice year just to break that cycle a little bit. So yeah, that's kind of what we're seeing on that. And staying on the corn topic here, quick, Allie, GDU wise, corn rootworm hatch we're probably right entering the zone here where they should be hatching and getting active here soon.
Yeah, so 50% of eggs are going to be hatched somewhere between 680 and 760 GDUs. So if we look at, we're sitting at about 655, we're getting really close to that point where we're going to start to see pretty significant hatch in our area. So I think it's just important, a few things to keep an eye on as we maybe start to understand what those pressures look like in our field. Obviously, Josh, we did some trapping last year and beetle counts were, lower. They're going to be different from area to area. I think the biggest thing to remember is that if you're trapping corn rootworms, it is going to be specific to that field. But it's nice to get a gauge this time of the year so that we can better identify what are those fields we want to focus on for maybe some rootworm trapping, not because we're going to necessarily have a remedy at this point in the year, but as we move to next year, making sure we have a really solid plan of what we need to do across those acres.
Yeah, and I'm a little, where I cover there, especially east of 52, we tend to see quite a bit more rootworm pressure than west of 52 in the viewer area. I'm a little nervous kind of coming into this, knowing that we had a pretty mild winter. I don't think mortality rate through this winter on the westerns or the northerns is going to be majorly high just from the way the winter was, and we had a lot of snowpack, and we really didn't get any severely cold temperatures, so that could be a little bit of a challenge. And then from there, it just boils down to where's my fourth year corn on corn and beyond. And that's really where the biggest concerns are going to be, where, we're just relying on a trait. And in some cases with some of the challenges economically, Allie, we've maybe pulled out some of those acres where we've been using some soil applied insecticide with a trait, maybe that's came out to try to control some costs, but we'll definitely want to be looking. And I know my hotspot areas, I know the target areas. It'll be the long range corn on corn, but time will tell. It's hard to predict, but I do anticipate every year I get some calls where we got pressure, but I'm a little concerned and on the long range corn on corn. And if you do got some long range corn on corn, certainly reach out to us or your sales rep, and we can help evaluate that as the time goes on here the next few weeks and see what we see.
Yeah, keep us updated on that for sure. One more quick question before we go, Josh, because this has been something that's been coming up quite often this week. Just some folks curious, is it okay to pull the trigger on some of these soybean post applications if you haven't already?
Yeah, I think it is. It's really windy this week, so just use caution this week. I'm a little nervous. A lot of windows are open there. The weeds are coming, so we got to watch it really close. But I think moving forward, we got a couple windy days, maybe a little rain here Thursday, Friday, and after that, I think for the most part, everything's going to be ready for post-applied applications. And next week, we'll update that, and I'm sure we'll have another whole host of things based on calls this week that we'll review and provide details from the field.